Welcome to the Vertical Sky Journal, the podcast that brings you everything you could ever want to know about Kilimanjaro. The climbing and the fitness, altitude and nutrition, the environment, the wildlife, and the people at the heart of the mountain. Today we begin a new series. Is Kilimanjaro for me? And we start with the question people only ever ask quietly at the end of an email about something else. Honestly, am I too old for this? The answer might be the best news you hear all week.
It really, really might be. And to ground this entire conversation in absolute reality right from the jump, we should mention that this deep dive stems directly from lived experience.
Yes, exactly. I mean, the founder of our company actually climbed Kilimanjaro as a middle-aged man.
Right.
And he had knees that, well, certainly had very strong opinions about the endeavor. He vividly documented his journey, describing that profound psychological barrier of undertaking such an enormous physical challenge at his age.
He even wrote an entire book confessing to those exact quiet doubts.
He did. Therefore, the guidance we explore today is rooted firmly in practical truth. The ultimate takeaway isn't merely that you are capable. It's that you might actually be significantly better suited to the mountain today than you were at, say, age 25.
Which sounds wild to say out loud, but to understand why that is true, let's first examine the demographic reality on the ground. Because it frequently astonishes people planning their first ascent.
Oh, completely.
When you stand at the park gates, you do not see a monolith of elite young athletes. You just don't. There is absolutely no upper age limit enforced on the mountain.
None at all.
None. The only age rule maintained by the park authorities is a minimum age of 10 for reaching the summit. Beyond that requirement, the mountain remains entirely open to everyone.
And people really do take advantage of that.
Oh, absolutely. Climbers in their 60s and 70s reach the summit regularly. We see it week after week, season after season. And the current age records are famously held by climbers in their late 80s, feats that are widely reported in the international press.
Wow. Late 80s.
Yeah, the 50-plus demographic is actually one of the mountain's largest and most successful contingents.
Which, that makes perfect logical sense when you consider the arc of a typical life. This specific age bracket represents that precise window when the necessary time, the financial means, and that powerful mentality of if not now, when finally line up.
Spot on.
Walking through the park gates is comparable to arriving at an unexpectedly diverse global gathering. It's brilliant. Witnessing that variety firsthand immediately dispels the myth that high-altitude trekking belongs exclusively to youth. This is absolutely not a young person's mountain that merely tolerates older climbers.
Exactly. It is truly everyone's mountain.
Yeah.
But having established that demographic fact that older climbers consistently succeed, we really must dissect exactly why they succeed.
Right, because it's not just luck.
No, not at all. The mountain demands a highly specific psychological and physical approach.
Yeah.
And it actively penalizes impatience. The core methodology of the entire ascent is captured in a single Swahili phrase that you will hear, 100 times a day.
Pull, pull.
Pull, pull. Which translates to deliberately, almost absurdly slow walking. To give you an idea of the pace, it's a rhythm where you place one foot in front of the other so slowly that it barely registers as forward momentum.
And this is where the younger climbers stumble, right?
Oh, precisely. Young, highly fit climbers frequently struggle the most with this concept because they instinctively fight the pace. They treat the ascent as a race. They push their cardiovascular systems far too hard, burning entirely too hot.
Because they're used to doing that at sea level.
Exactly. And they ultimately pay a severe physical price once they cross the 5,000-meter mark.
Let me stop you there for a moment because I want to challenge this idea to ensure absolute clarity for everyone listening.
Sure, go ahead.
If I consider a 30-year-old marathon runner, their cardiovascular system is objectively stronger than a 65-year-old system. They have greater lung capacity, a faster recovery rate. So why is the mountain routinely humbling the marathon runner and, allowing the grandmother to summit? That seems entirely counterintuitive to everything we know about athletic performance.
It does, but that is the perfect question. And the answer lies entirely in the physiology of high altitude. Altitude acclimatization is, it's broadly indifferent to age.
Okay.
The physiological ability to adapt to thin air varies from person to person far more significantly than it varies from decade to decade. At 5,000 meters, every single breath you take contains approximately half the oxygen it would at sea level.
Half. That's incredible.
Half.
Yeah.
So when that 30-year-old marathon runner tries to maintain their usual brisk pace, their massive cardiovascular engine demands a tremendous amount of oxygen that simply does not exist in the atmosphere.
Ah, I see.
They deplete their reserves instantly. The steady, patient 60-year-old, however, adopts the pole pace immediately. They keep their heart rate low. They don't demand excess oxygen from their environment. Consequently, they acclimatize beautifully.
So the environment definitively proves that deliberate pacing frequently trumps raw cardiovascular youth. Age itself is simply not the true risk factor here.
Exactly. And that explains the physical mechanism, but it also highlights the psychological advantage. Patience is the ultimate currency on Kilimanjaro, and patience reliably compounds with age.
Older climbers naturally possess the specific character traits required to summit well.
They really do. Consider the mental discipline required. Older climbers demonstrate the humility to follow the guide's instructions without allowing ego to dictate their speed.
Right, they aren't trying to prove anything to anyone.
Exactly. They possess the honesty to report a headache during an evening health check in the mess tent, rather than stubbornly attempting to tough it out and hiding symptoms that could become quite dangerous.
Which is so crucial.
And perhaps most importantly, they have cultivated the emotional steadiness required during the dark 3 a.m. moments of summit night.
Let's paint that picture for the listener. What does that specific moment actually look and feel like?
Imagine the scene. It's 3 o'clock in the morning. The temperature is well below freezing, often dropping to minus 15 degrees Celsius.
Freezing.
Freezing. The wind is biting. All you can see is a single line of headlamps stretching up a near-vertical slope of loose scree into the pitch black. You are exhausted, cold, and operating on very little sleep.
It sounds absolutely brutal.
It is. This is the exact moment where physical exhaustion inevitably meets mental doubt. The 25-year-old might panic when their body hits this absolute wall, having never really experienced their physical limits failing them before.
Right.
But the 60-year-old, they have lived through difficult nights. They've navigated immense life challenges, and they know intuitively that suffering is temporary. They simply put their head down and take one more step.
That is such a powerful distinction. So, if cardiovascular youth is not the magic solution and age is not the barrier, what actually requires our immediate attention? Let's explore the practical elements that are entirely within a climber's control.
Right. Let's do that.
Because there are 4 manageable factors to master, beginning with medical preparation.
Yes, so the medical conversation is your crucial first step. Once the climb becomes a serious idea, booking a thorough appointment with your doctor is essential. But the vital distinction here is to treat this consultation as trip planning rather than permission seeking.
I love that framing.
You walk into the surgery with your itinerary in hand. You must discuss the specific realities of the environment: high altitude, sustained physical exertion over multiple days, and any existing conditions you manage.
And what are the most critical conditions to evaluate?
Specifically, heart health, blood pressure, lung function, and diabetes.
Can you elaborate on why those specific conditions require such careful evaluation? Like, what is the actual mechanism happening in the body?
Certainly. Let's look at blood pressure as an example. When there is less oxygen in the air, your heart must pump faster to supply your muscles with the oxygen they need to keep walking.
Makes sense.
Simultaneously, the blood vessels in your lungs actually constrict in response to the altitude. If you already have high blood pressure, this high-altitude environment acts essentially as a physiological pressure cooker. Your doctor needs to understand this environment to advise you correctly.
And what about daily medications?
All medications must be carefully reviewed. Certain daily medications, such as diuretics or specific beta blockers, interact differently with altitude. Your metabolism changes, your hydration needs change, and some medications require specific timing adjustments when taken high on the mountain.
Now, I must just jump in quickly to remind everyone listening that this discussion represents general good sense and practical trip planning in this deep dive.
Oh, absolutely.
It is not formal medical advice from us. Your personal doctor is the absolute authority on your health. However, for the vast majority of individuals, the result of this doctor's visit is a green light accompanied by incredibly useful, tailored guidance. You bring the trip dates and you leave with a solid management plan.
Precisely. And with that essential medical foundation established, we must address the least discussed physical challenge of climbing Kilimanjaro:
The descent.
the descent. Climbers spend months focusing exclusively on the upward journey. They visualize the summit photograph at Uhuru Peak.
Naturally.
Yet the descent involves 2 grueling days of sustained downhill walking. This places an immense, repetitive, and often painful load on the knees and joints.
The descent is genuinely where the true physical toll is taken. And to solve this, trekking poles are not merely an optional accessory, are they?
Not at all.
They aren't just a minor convenience for those who feel they might need them. They act quite literally as a four-wheel drive system for your knees.
That's a brilliant way to put it.
I mean, imagine your entire body weight, plus a day pack, coming down on one knee joint with a slight drop, thousands upon thousands of times over 48 hours. Trek and tools transfer a significant percentage of that kinetic energy into your arms and shoulders, taking a massive load off the joints with every single step. They are entirely non-negotiable for a safe and comfortable return to the park gates.
Non-negotiable. Building on that mechanical support, proper equipment and specific training are also vital. You require boots with excellent internal cushioning that have been worn in for months prior to departure.
Because a blister on the way down.
Oh, a blister on the descent can completely alter your gait, forcing you to limp and putting unnatural strain on your hips and knees. It's a domino effect. Furthermore, your training must explicitly include genuine downhill walking.
Right, so just hitting the Stairmaster at the gym isn't enough.
No, preparing only by walking uphill on a treadmill leaves your stabilizing muscles completely unprepared for the reality of the descent. Downhill walking requires eccentric muscle contractions, where the muscle lengthens while under tension to act as a brake.
Right, I see.
If you don't train those specific muscles, your knees will just absorb all the impact. Finally, choosing longer, gentler routes inherently protects the joints by spreading that massive elevation loss over a much more manageable distance.
Which naturally leads us to the preparation you undertake before ever boarding your flight to Tanzania. We move to the third factor entirely within your control: the length of your training runway.
Yes, the training runway. It's entirely straightforward, but it requires genuine dedication. We always recommend a 12-week minimum preparation period, although 16 weeks sits much more comfortably.
It gives you a bit of a buffer.
Exactly. Superb buffer for life's inevitable interruptions. The regimen involves extensive outdoor walking, deliberately seeking out steep hills, and completing back-to-back weekend days carrying a loaded pack.
Give me an example of what a weekend looks like.
Well, you might hike for 5 hours on a Saturday, and then force yourself to wake up on Sunday morning, put the boots back on, and hike for another 4 hours. This teaches your body to operate on tired legs, mimicking the exact reality of a multi-day trek.
Now, how does age specifically alter this training program? Because surely there's some adjustment needed.
The only necessary age adjustment involves profound honesty regarding recovery. As we age, the physiological process of tissue repair takes slightly longer.
Right.
Harder physical sessions should be spaced out appropriately across the week rather than stacked consecutively. We must value steady consistency over sudden heroics. The mathematics of preparation are absolute.
Tell me about the maths.
A 58-year-old who trains deliberately 4 days a week for 4 months, allowing proper rest days, will confidently outclimb a 30-year-old who panics and attempts 2 weeks of intense treadmill running just before departure.
Every single time.
Every time. We have watched this exact scenario unfold repeatedly on the slopes.
That perfectly illustrates that preparation just cannot be rushed. Your body requires time to build endurance and strength. Which brings us perfectly to the fourth and final element: route choice. Time is just as critical on the mountain as it is during your training at home.
It really is. Route choice is heavily, inextricably tied to acclimatization. More days on the mountain equate directly to a significantly higher chance of success.
And the maths here is simple too, isn't it?
Very simple. By choosing the 7, 8, or 9-day itineraries, such as the Lemosho or the Northern Circuit routes, you provide your body with the gradual exposure it desperately requires to adapt to the thin air.
Right. Because trying to save a few £100 by booking a rushed 5-day or 6-day route is the most common pitfall climbers make.
Without a doubt.
That extra acclimatization time is exactly what turns the summit attempt from a precarious gamble into a highly reliable, methodical plan.
Those extra days allow for the slow, steady ascent that the pole philosophy demands. They facilitate the crucial strategy of climbing high and sleeping low.
Meaning you hike up, but come back down to sleep.
Exactly. You hike to a higher elevation during the day to trigger your body's red blood cell production, and then descend to a lower camp to sleep and recover. They provide the necessary margin for your body to adjust to the decreasing oxygen levels.
So you actually have some energy left for the cup.
Exactly, ensuring you arrive at the high camps with strength in reserve rather than arriving completely depleted and running on empty.
So, to synthesize all of this, the mountain certainly does not care about your birth certificate. It only cares if you did the walking. And season after season, it is the climbers in their 50s, 60s, and beyond who have actually put in the steady work.
They absolutely have.
If you are in your 50s or 60s and Kilimanjaro keeps visiting your thoughts, you are not too old. You are exactly on time. Have the thorough doctor's conversation. Buy the absolute best trekking poles you can afford. Commit to 12 honest weeks of training in the rain and the wind. Choose the long, majestic route. Come and be one of the climbers the local guides quietly respect the most.
It's a remarkable transformation to witness from an expert perspective, actually. The physical discipline cultivated during those 12 weeks of preparation builds an undeniable mental resilience. The older climbers arrive at the gates possessing a quiet confidence that the younger climbers often entirely lack.
Which leaves us with a final provocative thought to consider. If the primary requirement for success on this extraordinary mountain is patience, and patience is a virtue forged across decades of lived experience, perhaps the ultimate question is not whether you are too old for the mountain. Perhaps the question is whether the mountain is merely the opening chapter in an entirely new volume of your physical life. When you finally walk through those park gates and join that diverse gathering beneath the canopy, you will realize those opinionated knees were never a permanent barrier. They were simply requesting a better set of trekking poles and a wiser pace. Thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed this, do subscribe so you never miss the latest from the Vertical Sky Journal. You will find a full written version of this episode over on our journal at vertical-sky.com, and we would love you to come and say hello on Instagram.